Good morning. Thank you for being here. We're going to get started. It is a nice sight to see all these affordable housing advocates together this morning. We have a lot to talk about today. We have this room till 10 o'clock sharp, so we do have a hard stop. We got together before this meeting and decided instead of each of us giving slideshow presentations, we would make this more of brief introductions to all of our roles in what we're going to talk about today, and try to save plenty of time for questions at the end, because we're going to cover some stuff that may be new to you. And it's in some cases, it's relatively complex for a forum like this, but we want to make sure we get your questions answered while we have everybody assembled here today. So my name is Greg Slater. I am the immediate past chair of the CAAR Foundation. We have a few sponsors I'd like to recognize that paid for our breakfast this morning. They're the top row. Greenwood Homes, Gray Fox, and Virginia Housing made generous donations. Those sponsors are also very important partners to what we're going to discuss today, but we also have others we want to recognize, and that's the Piedmont Community Land Trust, Riverbend Development, and Albemarle County. I think we have a member of Albemarle County staff here with us today. So before we introduce each of our panelists, I thought I would take 2 minutes to tell you about the CAAR Foundation if you're not familiar with it yet. The CAAR Foundation was conceived several years ago and achieved its nonprofit status about 3 years ago, and it was created by the Board of Realtors, the CAAR Board. It's a separate nonprofit organization. It was born out of the history of CAAR and its efforts to be impactful in the affordable housing space. Before the Great Recession, our first major initiative in this space was creating the CAAR Workforce Housing Fund. We raised money to deploy as down payment assistance to help teachers, firefighters, nurses, and police officers achieve home ownership, right? By closing the gap between the price of the home and what they could afford. Because you're going to hear a lot today about the cost of creating affordable housing, and hopefully we'll quantify it a little bit for you so you'll understand what it really takes to help someone become a homeowner. For the last couple of years, we've been working behind the scenes, building a strategic plan, building out a committee structure. We have a lot of volunteers, both CAAR members and non-CAAR members. If you're interested in participating in the work we do, we're looking for volunteers from all aspects of the community. We were fortunate to have the resources to hire Dave Norris in 2024 as our executive director, and since he showed up, we put the CAAR into drive. So here are some brief ways we're trying to be impactful in the community, and that's through raising money and giving it away, engaging volunteers to be supportive of other nonprofits in the area, to raise education and awareness among our members in the community so they understand how they can be impactful. And of course, policy at the government level is important too, and we are advocates for affordable housing at every opportunity we get. So today, and there's our website. Today, we are going to talk about a very specific, what I'm going to refer to as a case study of what can happen when we put the right people together that have a willingness to be impactful and are committed and dedicated to being a part of the solution to affordable housing. The first partner is both on the development and home building side. We for about 20 years in this area, we've had Albemarle County working with builders and developers to include proffered or rezoning bonuses into their projects that require home builders and developers to try and build these homes and match them with people that make below 80% of the median area income. We're going to talk about median area income a lot today and what those numbers are and who that really is in our community. But it starts at the development level. Riverbend Development is here today, 2 in the room. So I'm going to hand it off to Chris Silvis. He's the president of the Charlottesville division of Greenwood Homes, and they are taking this opportunity at Victorian Heights, we're going to talk about as our case study to build some homes. Would you like to share a little bit about your organization?
Right. Thanks, Greg. So at Greenwood Homes, we started the company in 2020. And when we decided we were going to start a home building company in Charlottesville, one of the key parts of our business plan was how are we going to be able to give back to the community? And as we've grown the business and we've become very fortunate in our success with it, we have focused on affordable housing. And some ways that we are giving back are through partnerships with satisfying the affordable dwelling requirements for each neighborhood. Each neighborhood usually has an affordability component to it, but then also partnering with organizations to do fair housing and projects in the city of Charlottesville as well. So a project that we currently have going on with our partners at Riverbend Development, the Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority, and the Virginia Housing Alliance is a project on South First Street. We have a development project down there where Greenwood Homes is doing all the horizontal development of the project and building 51 townhome units at cost and providing housing with those partnerships to the Charlottesville community. More importantly for this group today, we want to talk about our project at Victorian Heights, which we just delivered. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going out of order here. Before I get to that, as we look at the neighborhoods in which Greenwood Homes builds in Albemarle County, we have a requirement to provide affordable housing in the units that you see on the screen. So there's 7 neighborhoods there. There's over 150 affordable housing units that will be delivered in the next 4 to 5 years. Some of those will be for sale units. Some of them will be rentals. Some of them will be part of a condominium. And we are hoping to align ourselves with the land trust on as many of those as we can, so we can assure that as many of those units stay affordable into perpetuity as possible. That's something that's always been tricky about affordable housing and providing it under the requirements of the governmental regulations, is that you sell it at an affordable price, and then after that homeowner lives in it, that affordability component is gone. And so you'll learn more about how that's possible to sustain that today with the land trust. So Victorian Heights, this is a really successful project for us. We delivered 8, or we are delivering, we're in the process of completing it now, 8 townhomes, 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhomes, just north of town on Berkmar Drive. And we have contracted those 8 units with the land trust to purchase them, and then for them to sell them to qualified buyers and keep them affordable into perpetuity. So it's been a really successful partnership so far. They've been super easy to work with. We love the mission, and we look forward to seeing home buyers in them shortly.
Thank you, Chris. So step 1 of this partnership is finding a developer and a builder committed to making the affordable housing in their projects happen, because we all know for the last 20 years, most of it hasn't happened. There are generally loopholes and ways around causing these things to happen. The reason it doesn't happen is it's expensive and very costly to the home builder. I mean, it's basically the first in-kind contribution to the cost of subsidizing housing to make it affordable. And we'll get into the math behind that before we're done today. But once we have the affordable housing being built, in this case, some of it's pretty much finished, we have to figure out how to help the buyers pay for it and qualify and educate. And our partners in this case are Gray Fox Mortgage and Virginia Housing. So I'd like to hand the microphone over to Tammy Wilt from Gray Fox Mortgage to briefly tell you about what they can do in this process.
Hi, many of you probably remember that I've served on the CAAR Foundation for about 6 years. So this is something that cuts really close to my heart, to be able to help people get into the houses. So we're going to help qualify people with the resources we have through Virginia Housing. We'll let Frank talk to you about their CLT, the Community Land Trust program that they have, as well as using Piedmont Housing Alliance and Spark funds to make these prices affordable for clients. If we have to work on their credit, whatever we need to do to make sure that they can afford and comfortably live in the beautiful homes is what we're going to be doing.
So in the history of the community land trust model, as I have tried to help people achieve home ownership through it for over 15 years now. We started with one lender, one loan officer in Seattle from Wells Fargo. It's the only bank that had a product that worked for this type of ownership. And over the years, it's grown. We were the first, or they were the first CLT in Virginia when they were launched. Now there's a second CLT in Richmond. And because of that, that caught the attention of the community banks and the organizations like Virginia Housing. And Frank's going to tell you a little bit about how Virginia Housing can help our CLT homebuyers.
Okay, so I'm Frank Webster. I am the Business Development Officer for Virginia Housing, covering the western part of the state. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone in this room that there's an affordability crisis in the nation and in Charlottesville and in every town and locality across the entire country. So one of the things that Virginia Housing does is that we work in partnership with the private sector to try to create new ways to make housing be affordable. And so because of how we're structured and how we do our financing and such, we can step out of the norm and be a leader and create new ways of financing that may be lagging if you just left it to the private sector. And so we have embraced the CLT model, and I think that we have brought a product to market that is superior to anything else that you would find. When you're doing CLT financing, go ahead and move the slide one, and go ahead and click on that twice. Okay, so when you're doing CLT financing, which is definitely something that helps with affordability, there's a couple of problems or challenges that everyone is going to face. First of all, you can't when you're doing a CLT property, you can't just go out and use a normal, regular, vanilla mortgage. So because regular vanilla mortgages require fee simple ownership, and when you're doing a CLT, you're not going to have fee simple ownership. There's a leasehold estate involved when it comes to the land that's going to be rented from the CLT. So you can't just go out there and go to any lender and just say, I want to do a CLT product. So that's one problem that you have. The other problem is that if you were doing a mortgage, it is a universal truth that we base calculations off of the lesser of the sales price and the appraised value. So that means even if the house were to appraise for considerably more than the sales price, which happens a lot in CLTs, the borrower is still going to have to make a down payment, which is a drag for people trying to get into their first home. And also, even if it's an extremely low loan to value, you have to have private mortgage insurance. Again, that adds cost to the transaction. So Virginia Housing has come out with a pilot program. This is not available to every lender yet. We're in an experimental phase, a pilot phase right now, where we have a small group of approved lenders that are working with this. But with our CLT program, we are able to calculate everything off of the appraised value and not the lesser of the appraised value and the sales price. What that means is if you have a sales price of $200,000 and the house appraises for $300,000, which happens a lot in CLT world, we will calculate all the LTV calculations off of the 300,000, and you have an extremely low loan to value. And it means for us, the borrower does not have to make a down payment. So if sales price is 200, appraised value is 300,000, they can finance the entire 200,000 of the purchase price of the property. having the borrower be able to get into the house with no down payment is a significant benefit to them. That overcomes one of the primary obstacles in people becoming homeowners. The other part of that is, in that situation, using normal mortgage lending, if the house was 200,000 and the the appraised value was 300,000, unless the borrower put down 20% of 200,000, they would have to have private mortgage insurance. Since Virginia Housing's pilot program allows us to calculate everything off of the appraised value, even if the borrower puts no money down, we're giving them credit for all that equity that's built into the transaction, and they would not have to have private mortgage insurance. And that helps, again, to lower the cost of the entire transaction, and it allows the borrower to get into the house for a lower, more affordable mortgage payment. So that's what Virginia Housing brings to the table in terms of our CLT loan product. Go ahead and move that. Okay. So when you're doing a Virginia Housing loan, primarily we're going to be doing conventional loans with a CLT program. We're going to get the benefit of the appraised values being much higher than the sales prices. And like I said, that already gives the borrower the benefits of no down payment and avoiding the private mortgage insurance.
Hey,
But in
Frank.
addition to that, Virginia Housing offers a number of other.
Hey, Frank, can I interrupt you for a
Yes.
second? We had some people that decided to make up their own parking spots today, and you're blocking people in that gotta go. So these 4 cars, you have to move immediately. The other group just got out, so there are spots available. But if you are driving a gray Elantra Hyundai with the license plate UHU 4263, you are blocking in a gentleman that has a doctor's appointment that he's got to go to. So please move your car. If you are driving a black Sonata UHZ 9252, you got to move your car. If you're driving a Chevy Black Impala with license plate ULY 7813, you got to move your car. And if you are driving a Mercedes TFJ 5189 white, you got to move your car. And who drove up the hill?
Mm.
Who did that?
Mm.
How did you do that? Please move your car. Thank you. I'm not done.
No.
If you are driving a silver Honda Civic with license plate, wait, did I do this one? No. TJJ 5225, you got to move your car. 5325. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. One of the side effects of having a popular event. Go ahead, Frank.
And just when I was getting to the good part. So as I had mentioned, when you're doing a loan with Virginia Housing, we have those benefits. We're counting the value of the house, meaning the borrower doesn't have to make a down payment. It's helping them to avoid private mortgage insurance. But on top of that, there's a number of other benefits that we pair up with those first mortgages, which are, you see that on the slide right now. All of these, what we call specialty products, will help lower the cost of the transaction, either by giving the borrower more equity into the property, because we can help them with their down payment, we can help them with their closing costs, or it helps to give the borrower a lower interest rate and a even lower mortgage payment. So when you're looking at that slide there, the first two points under specialty programs are forms of down payment and closing cost assistance. We have the plus second loan allows us to hold a small second mortgage behind the first, up to 4.5% of the sales price. And that can be used for either down payment or closing costs in the transaction. We also have a down payment assistance grant, which is basically free money that we are going to give to the borrower that can be used for the down payment or the closing costs. That can be paired up with your conventional mortgage on the CLT. Then the next two bullet points there are ways that we can lower the mortgage payment by lowering the interest rate. So Spark is a program that we offer to first-time home buyers that if the home buyer is a first-time home buyer and they meet the eligibility criteria, not only can they get the down payment and closing cost assistance, but we will lower the mortgage interest rate by 1%. 7% becomes 6%. And that has a huge impact to the borrower in making their payment be more affordable. The First Home Dream program, we just rolled that out. This is brand new, hot off the press. We announced it on May 1st, and I've been here 8 years, and this is the most popular program. It's generated more enthusiasm than any other program that I've seen in 8 years. So First Home Dream is a program that is like Spark, but a little bit better. It's for people who are generational first-time home buyers. So with Spark, the borrower has to be a first-time home buyer. That means they cannot have owned a home in the last 3 years. With First Home Dream, the home buyer has to be a first-time home buyer, and also their parents cannot have owned any real estate in the last 3 years, because we're trying to break them out of that generational not owning a house, because we know that home ownership is so important to wealth building, generational wealth building. So with the First Home Dream, if the home buyer is a first-time home buyer and the home buyer's parents are not homeowners within the last 3 years, we will lower the borrower's interest rate by 2%. 7% becomes 5%. So all of these things are available not only on our non-CLT lending, but they are also available on our CLT lending. And you can really pull all the pieces of this together and help the borrower get in for less money, help them have a lower monthly payment, and this can have a dramatic impact in making a home ownership become a reality for a home buyer. So go ahead and flip the slide. Okay, go the other way, please. There you go. So that's the DPA grant that we talked about. I won't go into a lot of detail. It's just free money. Yeah, we're giving the borrower on a conventional loan 2% of the sales price. If sales price is $200,000, we'll give them $4,000 to help them with their down payment or their closing costs. Next slide. The plus second loan will give up to 4.5% of the sales price to help the borrower. This is a loan that does have to be repaid. It's not a soft second, but we'll give more money to help. We'll give 4.5% of the sales price to help with down payment or closing costs. Next slide. Spark, I talked to you about that, lowers the interest rate by 1% for a first-time home buyer. Next slide. First Home Dream will lower the interest rate by 2% for a generational first-time home buyer. Next slide. There you go. So to do a CLT loan, everybody's got to be first-time home buyers, and everybody that's a first-time home buyer has to take home buyer education that we provide free of charge. And so that helps everybody to be equipped and prepared to purchase the home. Next slide. Okay, these are our income limits. This is a little complicated, so I'll just introduce you to it really quick. You're going to be looking at the first two sides or panels there under grant programs and standard bond programs. Go to Charlottesville, and your income limits to get into a CLT are going to range between $84,000 and $121,000 a year. And that's household income, and that's going to depend on the size of the family, and it's going to depend on if the borrower is getting a grant or a plus second from Virginia Housing. But those are pretty generous income limits, I believe, for a program that is intended for low to middle income households. Next slide. Okay, that shows you just a breakdown about, that's a job aid to help you understand which panel that you use to figure out the income limits for the program. Next slide. That will define for you what's included in Charlottesville. Charlottesville is considered to be Albemarle County, Charlottesville City, Fluvanna County, Greene County, and Nelson County. That's Charlottesville City. If you're building a property and doing a CLT in some other area that's not included there, it would fall under another section there, another property area that's called all other areas of Virginia. Next slide. Okay, and then we also have sales price limits. So for Charlottesville, the sales price limit would be $475. For all other areas of Virginia, which would be the not Charlottesville that we just defined, it's a little bit lower at $450,000. Again, 475 might be challenging in Charlottesville, but when you're doing affordable housing and CLTs, I believe that that is more likely to fit within that sales price limit. I think it'll work out well. Next slide. Okay, I'm done. So I will pass this along to the next.
Thank you, Frank.
Next speaker.
If you haven't heard, CLT.
Okay. GSE is it's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, basically.
So Frank gives a lot longer presentation. The resources available through Virginia Housing are immense and hard to keep up with, but it's truly remarkable. I think about it as a tech stack. You know, what we're gonna talk about here is the county set a price for Greenwood Homes to sell these homes. And at that price, someone who makes 80% of the median area income can't afford it. Right. And so that's where the partnership we've heard the expression CLT about 100 times now. For those of you in the room that have never heard that before, that is Community Land Trust. And our next guests are from the Piedmont Community Land Trust because we wanted to save them to last because they're, in my opinion, if the goal is to achieve affordable home ownership, they're one of the best cheat codes we have because to make people have the political will to invest what it takes to create this housing, the secret is making it affordable forever and not just the first person who owns it. And so we have Luis Oyola, who is the executive director of the Piedmont Community Land Trust, to talk to us a little bit about the basics of that model and how it keeps homes affordable forever.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Again, my name is Luis Oyola, and I am Executive Director of the Piedmont Community Land Trust. So if you've never heard the term Community Land Trust before, at its most basic, a community land trust is a form of shared ownership that preserves the use of a particular property for the community in perpetuity. The vast majority of community land trusts across the U.S., including us, focus on specifically preserving the affordability of homes of owner-occupied homes. The PCLT has been around since 2008. We're at 40 properties now. We expect by the end of the year to add 12 properties to our portfolio. And like you've heard, our main focus is permanent affordability, and how we achieve that is through shared ownership between the land and the home that sits on the land. So when we acquire a property and then sell it, we are only selling the improvements or the home on the land. We maintain ownership of the land and then enter into a ground lease with the new owner for use of that land. In our case, that ground lease is $25 a month, and they essentially get to use the land as if it was theirs. We don't really tell people how to use the land. But where we really come in and where our ownership of the land is really key is that ground lease enables us to set a price for when that owner goes to resell that home in the future, whenever that is. So our resale formula, and every community land trust has a different resale formula. You'll hear more about our specific calculations and how that applies in a real example. But in essence, just know that the resale formula allows for some appreciation of the home price while still not letting it skyrocket in the same way that you've seen all across the market right now, creating the crisis that we're in. But at its most basic, that's what a community land trust is. That's what we do. We preserve affordability for owner-occupied homes, and it's through this ground lease, and it works, and you're going to hear soon an example of exactly how that works.
Thank you for that brief overview. Last up is Keith Smith, who is the chair of the Piedmont Community Land Trust and a local realtor, and he is going to talk to us specifically more about Victorian Heights.
So who parked on the hill? I think that's awesome that we have this many folks showing up for this event, that folks need to park on the hill. That is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So if those who don't know me, my name is Keith Smith. I'm the current chair of the Piedmont Community Land Trust. been on my 8th year. I'm going to get into it because we're about at 9:21 and I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of questions. So I'm going to go through things a little bit faster than I kind of hoped, but we'll go back and we'll kind of tackle some Q&As. So the first 2 slides, I just wanted most of the folks in this room understand the reality where the market is right now. So what you're looking at right now is based on the $125,000 AMI, right? What the typical buyer can buy right now that meets that criteria is roughly between 375 and 550. So that's the scenarios that are there. And thank you to Tammy for helping me. That's national averages on debt to income ratio, so forth and so on. So the bankers in the room can probably either shake their heads or not. Go to the next slide if you don't mind, please. So right now, as of this morning, there's only 31 or 17% of homes available in Albemarle County to buy between those 2 price ranges. That's why this conversation we're going to have today is so important. Would you mind the next slide, please? All righty. Well, we're probably out of order there. So try my slide number 2. We're looking for housing affordability. Yeah. One more. See what we got. There you go. So back in 2022, I started flipping the 2 words from affordable housing to housing affordability. But that first 2 slides kind of demonstrated why this is so important. So while you're looking at these faces here and these wonderful folks, what makes housing affordability, what makes what we're trying to do here at the Land Trust works, what makes it the Regional Housing Partnership work is these 4 pillars. So we have to have all these 4 pillars show up at equal strength and equal buy-in, local government. This is, Frank's organization is a quasi-governmental organization. It's not quite a governmental organization, not quite a private organization. Is that correct? Yeah. So we're going to put them in the local government thing. We've had Albemarle County show up to take care of it. We've got nonprofits sitting at this table to include PHA and others. The private sectors. If Greenwood, and we're going to talk about how this math is going to work at Victorian Heights, if Greenwood didn't show up to the fight, we wouldn't all be sitting here. So I just want to take a second because I've been doing this for 8 years. Greg's been doing it much longer than that. Greenwood was, and I'm just going to say it out there, was the first ones to step up to the plate and actually bring dollars to the table. So I think they deserve a round of applause. I'll take that $100 later. Who we serve is most important because we have these conversations, us affordable housing or housing affordable geeks or whatever. We start talking about all this math and all this stuff, but we don't talk about who we serve very often. And that is generally, they have to be at the table. These are the buyers. These are the folks, the cops, the firemen that are there. Let me see. So we're running out of time here. So I'm going to go to Victorian Heights. If that would be slide 3 on my deck, if you don't mind, please. There you go. There you go. All righty. So let's talk about how the math works. So 8 years ago, 2 years ago, in order for us to generate an affordable housing unit, which the typical AMI buyer can afford somewhere between $225 and $275 is kind of the maximum amount. 2 years ago, that number used to be between $30,000 to $60,000 on the high end. Right now, in order to produce these units over at Victorian Heights, there's $70,000 worth of subsidy that has to come into it. So Greenwood is costing $325 to build it. They're selling it to the Land Trust for $275. Thank you. We're reselling them for $275. We're bringing an additional $20,000. That's the Land Trust to pay for the buyer's closing costs, to pay for the transactional costs. That's the cost of the transaction to go ahead and do it. So that's a total of $70,000. So Greenwood's bringing 50 grand. We're bringing 20. That equals 70. That's why this conversation is so important. That's why this conversation of $5 help, $10 help. This is a big tackle from a subsidy perspective on it. So let me see, I'll go through, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Let me do a real world scenario. My executive director, dear friend, Luis talked about, and that's be slide 5, brother, talked about how the resale formula works. So this is a real life scenario. That'll be slide 5. There you go. Thank you, sir. So back in 2019, the land trust built 4 units on Nassau Street. Trust works when we sell them. We do an appraisal, right? That's the fair market value. When the buyer goes to resell it, they go ahead, the land trust does another appraisal. So what's the difference between the original appraisal and the current market value? The buyer or the owner gets to keep 25%. So the short version of that scenario is in a little less than 4 years, because of the market, they walked away with $50,000 in their pocket. Now, this particular buyer had a grant, so they didn't have any down payment. We paid the closing costs. They got a loan. So they basically walked in to buy this home, this 80% AMI buyer, for $215,000, walked away 3 years, almost 4 years later with $50,000 in their pocket and walked up the housing ladder. They went into a market rate home. And the secret sauce of the land trust is that home is forever affordable. Our dear friend Lloyd in the back, the county city, gave us $60,000 for that unit. That $60,000 will give forever because the next buyer who came in and bought that was an 80% AMI buyer. And that particular individual over time will build appreciation, build equity, and then eventually move up the ladder.
Keith, can I add something there?
Sure.
One of the things I like to point out, having seen the cycle of homes created and resold, is if you look at that math, 315 sold for 215, then 415 sold for 240. The home's not just permanently affordable. In an appreciating market, it's getting more affordable over time.
So if you don't mind, go to slide number 1, because this is the fun one. Oh, no, you don't have the Bert and Ernie one? Oh, come on. Let's have a little bit of fun. So Greg and I have been doing this for a long time. I call it the Bert and Ernie show. So I'll let you decide who's Bert and who's Ernie on that. So look, we're at roughly 9:30. I got a couple different slides, but I really think, and it's up to you, Greg, we can go ahead and take some questions for the floor. Or
before we get to questions, can we talk a little bit about at 275, what we think from the resources from the buyer will be and what their monthly payment will be? We did an example like that, didn't we? Yes. Do you remember those numbers? Well, I want to say I saw a monthly payment of about $2,300 a month. And I wanted to point that out because every now and again, I'm going to tell you a few things I've learned that stuck out with me that I like to share because they're easily, to grasp. And when I saw people buying homes that were built in our Pat Last project and looking at their monthly payments, they were getting a nicer home that they owned for less than it would cost them to rent something inferior. And these homeowners taught me through this model, we're going to have conversations. People are going to talk about that resale math and how we recalculate the price and appreciation sharing. But at the end of the day, it's about equity and cash flow. And the buyers I've met over the years, these new homeowners, it's the cash flow. They now own something. They can't be moved from it. It's theirs. They can pass it down to their heirs. And it's a fixed price for their housing now. And it's better than what they otherwise could rent. Because the problem this model solves is breaking folks out of what I call the rental rut. They can never save the money they need because of all the expenses we talked about and the cost of housing to break free from it. So this is the model that helps people break free from it.
So we'll start doing this Bert and Ernie thing here. So Greg and I had a great conversation yesterday because we were talking about the resale formula, and we were talking about, maybe most of us in this room want to think about what that resale formula is. Since I've been chair, I've been directly connected to over 3 dozen affordable housing sales. There's not a single buyer that ever asks me a question about the resale value. What they care about is getting into the ownership game. They care about building generational wealth. But to every person that I personally handed a key to, it ended up in tears. They never believed that they were going to be able to own a home. And we all do this for a living. This is what we do, right? We love handing keys to people and getting folks into homes. But when somebody's in tears and they hug you and they say that thank you, and the second thing they always talk about is paying it forward. We can't wait to do this for somebody else. So if we're kind of thinking about the resale formula in this room, most buyers don't care. What they care about is getting in the room, getting in the unit, spreading the wealth, and start getting out of this trap that Greg has outlined, which is rental.
Did you have something to share there, Tammy? Any more than that on the math?
Sorry. So one of the things, this might be too small for you all to see very well, but you'll notice there's a line item there that says other credits of $5,500. That's the 2% down payment grant that they get to go toward closing costs. This is the only program where they'll allow that 2% grant to go toward closing costs. It usually helps toward down payment. They don't need a down payment in this scenario. This is an actual scenario based off of the appraisal of one of the properties. So, and this does also not include if they got spark funds, which would drop the rate. And they could, or instead of the 2% grant, they could do 4.5% second to also help lower the cost. Or we're also talking about other ways to finish that.
So is there a scenario in which somebody, there's those 8 opportunities, 2 of them are 265, 2 of them are 260, and the rest are 275, the 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. And we'll talk about those homes a little more if you want to hear about them. They're brand new homes by Greenwood Homes. They weren't dumbed down to make them more affordable. They're as nice as anything in the community. But is it possible for someone to show up that checks all the boxes in that tech stack to become a homeowner with no money out of pocket if the CLT and people who support the CLT pay their closing costs?
Yes, they just have to show 1% funds.
They have to have 1% in the bank. Thanks. So let's open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask us? MK's, I saw that hand first. We have a microphone for the audience?
MK does not
We
need a
can hear you.
microphone.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Just want to make sure I understand. You mentioned that the CLT pays the closing costs.
Yeah, so we have, as long as I've been chair, always pay the closing costs.
And that's about 3% of the purchase price is what they've set aside. When they write the contracts, there's a credit in there.
We're paying, I'll jump into it. We're paying an MK because we got $800,000 from Virginia Housing, and we're using that $800,000 to pay that off. This is an ask is what we're talking about, right? So we operate off of donations or grant money. So we receive that money. We use it for acquisitions. We use it for closing cost assistance. And by the way, that 20,000, there's multiple closings here. We're paying the closing cost for the buyer. We're also paying our own closing costs because we're acquiring it from, in this case, Greenwood, and then we're reselling it. So
That, in this particular breakdown doesn't account for us covering that. But we will be covering that for this project.
You know, as the foundation, we're using this as an example of why you should support us so we can support them. Collectively, the foundation can support. Honestly, these partners don't come together and cause this project without the foundation's leadership. It was directly involved in putting these people together from just the past experience of the board and seeing the opportunity and matching them together. So as realtors in the room, and those of you who aren't familiar with the foundation at the highest level, this is an example of what we can do for the community. Cause things to happen that otherwise wouldn't happen. The next thing we can do, we can donate and we can offset their costs of paying those closing costs so they can help more people.
Can I say
Lori Maestro?
Can I say something, Jay?
Yeah.
So just also, if you are in a blessed situation where the CLT is paying the closing costs, the grants or the other types of specialty products that we offer, that can be used to further lower the loan amount. It could apply, so it won't be a double dipping or anything. CLT, the CLT will pay the closing costs, and the money that we have that I said could be used for down payment or closing costs, it'll just go to further decrease the loan amount, put more equity into the property, and further lower the monthly payments. Yes, absolutely.
Lori Maestrell. So there, CLT, answer that question.
No. Our home buyers have sometimes sold within a year of ownership. Just to be clear, in the entire history of the CLT, we've had 5 resales out of a total of 45 homeowners. So these are not frequent for us. People want to stay in their homes, but we don't tell them to stay in their homes for a particular time.
Yeah, so I think in its core, the CLT model was designed to help people get to the point they could use the house till they didn't need it anymore, if they so choose, and take that equity and go buy a market rate home and open up the opportunity for somebody else. But it's also 90 years is how long you can own one of these homes. Heather Griffith.
Well, and the lease automatically renews, so it's indefinite.
Yes, they're not allowed to be rented by the owners. Anita Dunbar.
Oh, so
No,
that's
no.
not the minimum credit score.
No, so
That
that's
was just an example.
I'll jump in that just was an example for what, $125,000 of the credit score. There is no minimum.
640 is usually, yeah. And if they're not there at that point, if there's a way we can get them there quickly, we are going to do that. No, we don't have one of those yet, but yeah.
Keith Smith.
All righty. That's a great question. Slide number 4, please. We'll get there. There you go. So we're going to be listing these homes shortly. So the way the process works, and this has been the case for the last 36 homes, they'll hit the MLS. You're going to call the listing agent, which will be me. On that, we'll talk through your client's needs. We'll pre-qualify them as far as what I call self-identifying as income. There's a registration form. We'll connect them with the registration form that goes to the PLCT. Then they're going to reach out to Tammy. And then they're going to find out if they actually qualify. I will tell you, my personal experience is usually about somewhere between 10 to 15 to 1 that actually starts with that phone call that kind of works through the funnel, because people either make more money than they think they do, or they have credit challenges and so forth and so on. And then if they need down payment assistance, they're going to work through PHA for that. And then once those boxes are checked, then we tour a home and write a contract. Prices, the price is the price. There is really not much to negotiate from on a real estate transaction perspective. If we had 1,000 of these, that funnel might look a little bit different, but we have more folks than we have the need. So it'll get listed. We'll have a conversation, walk through your client's needs, register, get a pre-approval, take a look at the home. If they like it, they write a contract, then they move on.
To finding the buyers for these homes. So Keith is going to use traditional realtor methods, right? These will be in the MLS, which will put it on Zillow and things like that. It'll capture the attention of a lot of people because of the price point that this is not for. That's one of the things I love about this model. It catches people who are kind of stuck between what they need to have to buy and the limit, or who can enjoy it instead of passing through at some stage of life. But in my
Greg.
experience, it's difficult to find the right buyers or any buyers for that matter. He just told you 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 15 leads. And what you all can do to help us is think about the people in your community that could benefit from something like this, because in my experience, it's hard to reach these buyers because they've given up on home ownership. They're not on Zillow, they're not on Realtor.com, and they're not thinking it's going to happen in their lifetime. And so that's why it's more than traditional marketing. It's word of mouth. It's reaching the right organizations. Close to realtors has always been teachers, nurses, firefighters, and police officers, but it's not limited to that. It's just finding the right community people and educating them. And sometimes when the first opportunity comes their way, they're not ready, but now they're aware, and we can put them on a path to being ready for the next opportunity.
Greg, I just want to add on the, this is what Keith laid out is the steps for someone to buy a home. But as you can imagine, and especially for a deal like this, we will have multiple people who likely qualify at the same time for these homes. So the next question becomes, how do you pick? And our general process, well, our policy is that who has done these steps the earliest, that's who we go with. We don't, the law only allows us so much wiggle room for selecting buyers. So that means, just to be transparent, that people who have done orientation last year, for example, and can prove that they are financially ready to buy a home will be prioritized over someone who attended one of our orientations last month or last week. So that's something important for y'all to know for your clients. And I encourage you, and it's part of why I highly encourage people to be ready, like go to the orientations, look at your finances, even if we're not selling a home at that moment, because we will, for what I call our wait list, we will be, you will have sort of an advanced view of our listings and they will be prioritized for purchase if they attended our orientation earlier, just to be clear.
Luis, Luis, somebody's asking on Zoom, how do you sign up for the orientation class?
On our website, piedmontclt.org, our page Steps to Homeownership has a link to our interest form. That's the easiest way to do it.
That's the question Abby had. Michael Guthrie, Chair of the CAAR Foundation. That's great. Thank you.
Great comment, Michael. That's why that first part of the sales funnel that Greg and I created 8 years ago works, right? Because that conversation is, we're going to start bringing the real estate agent alongside with us. And back to, oh, got it. Got it.
One of the initiatives of the CAAR Foundation is to create a navigator program, and it doesn't just apply to the Community Land Trust program. We're trying to find realtors who want to volunteer their expertise to help first-time homebuyers navigate all of this stuff. I mean, a lot of professionals in the room, and I can tell you the Virginia housing stuff is overwhelming. The financial math is overwhelming. The contract, the inspections, all of this stuff, we know this as realtors, but we have the opportunity to coach and just give that general advice. We give people, give them the confidence of what they're doing and why it's important, and set them on the right path to home ownership. Yes, ma'am. Great question.
No, I really appreciate that question, because that's a priority for us, like for people who, for systemic reasons, historical reasons, have been locked out of the homeownership market. So we work really closely with Piedmont Housing Alliance, the Financial Opportunity Center, who have programs that for people who like really need that support to get through programs either through down payment assistance or through financial empowerment um, and their home buyer classes. They also are able to, they can also be part of our PCLT waitlist. And in that way, like I was saying, if the earlier they do it, the more of a priority they are to buy our homes. We're also like these homes, to be honest, are on the higher range of the prices that we should sell for lower income ranges. So we are also trying to develop homes like in the Fiveville neighborhood. We developed 5 homes that were sold for 160. These were rehabs. And we're building 4 homes as part of the Kindlewood redevelopment that PHA is doing for new homes where our target price is 160. So we're also trying to lower the prices to make them more accessible and have a wider range of prices. As far as, and then to the outreach question specifically, we have, as of February of this year, Jada Howard, who's right behind you, as our community engagement coordinator, who has very deep roots in the community and has been taking on the task of educating people of the CLT and sort of helping bridge that, I guess you could call it knowledge gap or knowledge barriers of how to become a homeowner, and also specifically how the CLT can help them become a homeowner. That helps answer.
And one other thing I would add, the foundation is basically here in support of everyone who's causing these things. And one of our first initiatives in our strategic plan is we developed a partnership with Charlottesville tomorrow. I believe they're here today. There you are. And they have created an affordable housing resource guide on their website. So it's probably the most detailed list of affordable housing opportunities and support that we've had in this community, and it lives right on the Seville Tomorrow page.
And I'm wondering about real transparency and real partnership, so that one, we're not duplicating our efforts out of the community, and 2, that we're really sharing the information that we have in true transparency in the communities. I mean, not that I work with everyone in the community, but I'm in these spaces a lot. And when I first got invited here by my friends at PHA, working as part of the steering committee, the families that I've told that I know are paying market rent in some of these places that are upward over $2,000 a month, and in these low income places, they had never heard of this. And so again, just wondering, like, what else can we do to make sure that everyone is getting the opportunity to have the same information?
I'm going to give you another opportunity that we're working on at the CAAR Foundation. This is in our strategic plan, everything you just said. And we have a committee called the Community Outreach Committee. And right now it's just a handful of realtors, but we are actively pursuing, you don't have to be a realtor to participate at the CAAR Foundation. We're looking for any community partners that want to come help us, or even just meet with us so we can know what that group does, so we can add it to the portfolio of resources we know are available. So we're, in our first real year of operation, and it's a shotgun approach to trying to figure all this out at the same time. But there's a question in the back I have not gotten to. Go
I would
ahead.
just add real quick that I appreciate the note that, and I think that's something that we got to work on for reaching people, because there are a lot of silos here.
Go ahead.
It depends on the visa type. So. Yeah, you can just contact any lender can tell you that, but it does depend on the type of visas that they have. So they cannot, if they are on a visa, usually do an FHA loan, but the conventional loans that we're looking at here, that's still a possibility.
Okay, 10 minutes to go. Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia. I'm going to repeat her question since I guess there is an online version of this, but Cynthia asked if there was a way to create a platform of education for realtors to understand this stuff. In the history of, it's part of the reason is being here and finding out who's interested. We have a list of people that we can reach out to now to invite to everything we do. But, you know, in the history of CAAR, we did this. It was a workforce housing designation. It was before the Great Recession. The Great Recession derailed a lot of the work we do for affordable housing and turn to other needs at that time. But that's in the plans. We would like to create a designation, a series of classes, that don't stop so that we can help people understand these things on a higher level. And yes, that's part of the plan. Any other questions? Yes, Michael Guthrie. That's going to be the last slide, Michael. That's going to be in the closing argument. Okay, over here.
Back off of what Tracy shared about like lower income folks, right? Where they generational wealth has been ripped from them. So when we were speaking about the 275 price point and that being kind of at the higher end, when we talk about the land trust piece and how when Tracy shared the folks at Hardy Drive, you know what I'm saying, like that, you know, this price point is tough to reach folks that are at that point. So even talking about the point of like, hey, we're going to share this about how you can support. I think the only way we can get to that place is actually by adding more subsidies so we can get to a lower sales price.
That's right.
But the other thing is that as we're building developments, and I just wanted to say this very loud and clear, is that we also have to have that lens that Louise is kind of sharing about making sure that we are able to diversify some of these neighborhoods because the people that live in Fikeville don't, and I will tell you, I was a part of the project that they spoke about, people that live in Fikeville, they don't always want to stay in those neighborhoods. And sometimes they want to move out. So I just wanted to add that.
Sure. Do you get the CLT guys have anything to say about that? Look, you've done stuff in Fluvanna County now. I know you're constantly looking for other communities to find the resources to create. Go ahead.
So Tasia, it boiled down to subsidy. Yes, we'd love to open this up to as many folks as possible, but it's dollars, right? So Fluvanna County, we did our first 2 affordable housing units in Fluvanna County, and that was 2 years ago, and you're very familiar with those transactions. Those were, what, $50,000 worth of subsidy? It is now up to $125,000 to make it happen in Fluvanna County. So it's a matter of subsidy. That's the last slide that Michael spoke about. It's about money. That's what it's coming down to. So we can communicate, we can educate, we can go through all the stuff. But I can tell you as a chair, looking at somebody in the face and saying, I'm sorry, I don't have the capital to help you, and they start tearing up, that's a position I hate being in. I hate having that conversation. So this is about an ask, guys. And, you know, this is not 5,000. This is a lot of money. Fluvanna County is up to 120. In order to make that work, you're up to about $125,000 in subsidy.
I will just add, like, just even knowing that higher subsidy is needed, I think it's worth it as much of a challenge as it is, you know, for creating that wider range of affordability. But the challenge remains getting that subsidy in the first place. And I think there are examples out there of how to get that, like this, Minnesota State has established a statewide fund dedicated specifically to community land trust development so that they can get to that 6-figure level subsidy for deeper affordability. I think Virginia Housing has taken a very important first step in establishing their single family housing developer grant and having the pilot version of that go to the 5 community land trusts in Virginia first. I think that shows a commitment and a vote of confidence in permanent affordability. So I think that there's such a long way to go for local governments, for the donors in this area to understand how the community land trust works, why it's worth investing, and so that we can then get that subsidy that we need to get to that deeper level of affordability to really diversify our neighborhoods in the area.
Thank you.
So I'll just add something real quick to that. When we first, how many units did we own, Greg, back 8 years ago? Half a dozen?
Maybe 10.
So we're now approaching 40. So we're going in the right direction. More subsidy helps that. More subsidy can lower the AMI, help people at the lower income level. But, you know, this is just requiring a substantial amount of money. I know this is a CAAR Foundation event, but I'm gonna be a little bit, not to mention this. I also co-chair the Regional Housing Partnership. Back to the question of resources. Look up the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission under the Regional Housing Partnership. It's built on the 4 pillars. There's a lot of information in there, but seems to be too much information, and it needs to be consolidated into one source.
MK has a comment, then we'll try to wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to kind of tie it, I feel like I'm echoing, back to bring it full circle for everybody for just a second, because I heard from you all a lot of really good ideas today. And I want to just let you know that the foundation and part of our strategic planning and a part of the work that we've been doing, a lot of heavy work for the last 3 years, is those initiatives, right? So having a housing resource fair that's different than the one that is currently put on, but taking it to the community, right? So this is one of our ideas. So having it on Hardy Drive, having it in Fifeville, setting up a table where people walk by and see you and what are you doing? Who are you? Getting in front of the right people is one of our ideas. Another idea is having the Housing Navigators program, which we talked about, having the online resource thing. And so the way that we do this as a foundation, as an organization of realtors, is by funding this group of people who are bringing all these things together. So hopefully you are motivated to show up, to have the designation that Cynthia recommended. That's another idea, right? And not even a designation, but it was mentioned last week, I think, that we're talking about making it so that in CAAR, there will be a field or a way that you can designate these as affordable units, right? So those are the type of initiatives that we work on, and that's why we need your support.
Thank you for those comments. In closing, I would say, this is just one example of how affordable housing is created, and it is in the higher end of the cost spectrum. But the county has policies that are trying to cause these that don't work. And this is the partnership and the amount of money it costs to make them work, because we have an affordability crisis. It's not because the county doesn't know what they're doing. Things are just too expensive and cost too much to do. And we support all nonprofits. Our first contribution went to AHIP last year when we decided we needed to start doing something. We gave them a grant, and we'll continue to look for other ways to support the people doing the work and not replace them. So if you're interested, here are the ways you can support us. The QR code's on the screen. It's on the brochure in front of you. Volunteerism is just as important as the contributions. You can contact anyone on the board, and we'd be happy to talk to you about how you can fit into helping us as we get going. And then we have one more slide for an idea we came up with recently. We're lucky to have our first major sponsor in our realtor community is Dogwood Realty. Rod and Christy Phillips are here. Rod happens to be a little bit of a band promoter at Pro Renata. And so I was talking to him one day, and anybody remembers the concerts for workforce housing at the Pavilion back in the day where we decided it was time. We needed a fundraiser, and we need something fun for realtors. And so on September 4th, all we have a date, a band, and a location at this point. The owner of Pro Renata is giving us his concert hall for free to have a band they say is the most popular band they've ever had, Gone Country. And our presenting sponsor is Dogwood Realty. And so we're going to be selling tickets and sponsorships here for the next several months. You'll hear lots more about this. It should be a great time, and we hope you all can join us. And we thank you very much for being here today. We hope to see you again.
Hey, Greg, can you give me a second?
What?
Can you give me a second real quick?
Go ahead, Keith
So
Smith.
I just wanted to thank everybody at this panel. These are the 4 pillars. These are the folks that are making it happen. I want to give an extra shout out to Greenwood because, I've been doing this for 8 years. This is huge that they're showing up with those type of dollars and commitments. So give them an extra round of applause, and thanks, guys.